Hey guys, it's Matt. Several things before the reading of chapter 58. The reading probably will begin around the 4-minute mark. Just a personal note, it seems like I've been delivering chapter 55 through 58 or 9 for months, and there's some weird reality loop going on. It seemed like about 2 weeks to deliver chapter 1 through 50, and I looked and I'm like, I'm still on 58? Didn't I do this? I've been in the high 50s, it seems like, for months. It's just a weird little reality glitch that's personal to me, and you've probably noticed similar things. I don't want to make a big deal of it. I'm not suggesting anything. The second thing is regarding my last video about the CNN special Apollo 11 that aired. It's going to air again July 20th from 9 to 11. 9 and 11. It's going to air back to back. I missed that initially in the presentation. I put it in the comments. It's going to air at 9 and 11. 9/11 is coded in the presentation of the movie. The 11s pop up like I've never seen before, and 13 is almost as prevalent. But I'm going to stick to my conviction that you really should watch it, and it's almost like the know thy enemy strategy. And as many times as I've said, stop watching the screen. There are certain times we have to observe thy enemy, okay? And I don't want to get into a 5 or 10 minute thing here. If anybody believes I'm promoting CNN or something like that, I mean, really, it's just, there's certain times we have to observe what the system is trying to do and the way they're doing it. This is one of those times. So yeah, I'm actually going to remind people before the 20th to watch CNN, okay? But you'll understand why, I hope, with the follow-up presentation after most people have seen it. Regarding the stalled century video, somebody sent me a link to some kind of super technology being built in China regarding digging underground tunnels. And I thought to myself, this is a good point. We can't just assume this is a global phenomenon. Look at China. I'm sure they would say massive changes from the new millennium, 2000, through today. So I'd be curious, our friend Nige is in China, or others. Yes, the technology and the industrious way of living in China has skyrocketed in 30 years, with people in high rises and everybody having a cell phone and millions of more cars, where in the late 80s everybody was on a bike. So yes, it's not the same way overseas, but would people still say around the world you have the same stalled global creativity, the same themes, even in books, no new music, anything related to art, movies. Of course we see booming China cities and 3 gorgeous dams and that sort of progress. But just because there's technological progress, that doesn't completely squash the idea that basically the whole world has been moved into some sort of stalled reality. Okay, that's the best way I can put it. So others around the world, do you see it, especially in the Far East, and do you, Len, in Indonesia, do you see, other than technology, are we looking at a stalled system that has no creativity left the way I described it here? They're letting the U.S. die. I didn't talk about that in the stalled century. The U.S., they're going to get us to think for the next 20 years that this is the greatest country with the most technology. They're let the U.S. die off. Like Levitt talks about, astrologically, the time for the next age will be Central and South America. It will be, and then maybe that's a reason why these, quote, elite, what else, we use the same old terms we have to get rid of, but whatever. They're buying up, tens of thousands of acres potentially in South America. But there's no doubt that they're letting the U.S. die out, and they're just going to let everybody think here we're on the cutting edge of everything. I go to pick up my friend from the train station. The Amtrak Northeast Corridor is the most popular corridor of Amtrak from Boston to D.C. If there's any line in the country that should have a modern train system or even a bullet train system, it should be D.C. to New York. And although some people will say, well, Matt, they can't do that now, it's unsafe. That train goes through hundreds of towns, and you can't have something ripping through hundreds of towns at 200 miles an hour. Okay, but what pulls up when that train comes in is basically a 1980 piece of shit. I mean, this big rusty metal thing, she'll be coming around the mountains if she can make it. It's pathetic. Here it comes, this big, rusty, ugly metal thing. It says Amtrak. I don't think they even spelled it correctly across the side. Ding, ding, ding. It pulls up. It's just, it's a piece of shit. The cars are a piece of shit. Look, you look at the trains in Singapore and China and Japan, the bullet trains. Even the channel from London to Paris is half-assed compared to what they have in the Far East. And, there's nice dining cars, and it moves, even the channel moves up to about 200 miles an hour, where some in the Far East go about 300. But it's just, look, they're letting the U.S. die out. That is just one area where they are. And it was worth noting, these issues are worth discussing in the stalled century type discussions. And what I'm calling chapter 58, or where I start a reading, it might not be chapter 58 in the book. Sometimes I have to stop a video, wrap it up, so these chapter markers aren't going to correspond to final chapter markers in the book, if I even have any in the book. So it kind of goes into something about waking people up. We know how difficult and how futile that is. I want to make sure everybody's aware of this. I mean, it's almost impossible to wake up anybody on the fly. They have to give you signs and symbols and ask certain questions and almost bring it up themselves. Start asking questions where you'd be able to determine somebody's ready to hear some of this information. You can't just go up to anybody and try to convince them of something that we look at. We know this now. It's futile, the Borg would say. But everybody comes around at their own time, and we just have to look for those signs. I just wanted to mention that before I start the reading. It's relevant. So, how do you, quote, wake people up to the control structure and the script that they're trapped inside without playing right into the hands of the puppet masters, and at the same time feeding the puppet masters with fear and giving energy and attention to the George Bush creatures and the Hillary Clinton flying dementors? I've always found that it's a difficult balance. If you're even successful in, quote, waking somebody up to 9/11, that the official news story has a few problems. If they don't get afraid right away, they will get very angry at the system, which feeds the system. We've talked about energy and frequency in the past. Again, they get angry. That's what the system wants. Now, if they don't see what you're presenting in trying to wake them up, they will also get very angry at you. Some people get violent, as we've witnessed. Now, this anger and general fear is exactly what the system wants. The system also gets secondary benefits. I would guess millions of relationships have ended. Millions of relationships have ended over, say, one person seeing 9/11 in a certain way, or seeing Sandy Hook in one way, and that associate, friend, or loved one not being able to see it. Yeah, it's one of the, and I call it a secondary benefit to the system. Let's push that up to primary. Relationship destruction is absolutely something they're going for here, and they've been very successful at it. My God, look around. I mean, you should, Greg, his situation, mine, others have come forth. I mean, if you better balance this correctly with people around you, or it will destroy relationships. On the other hand, what are we to say and do about all this? Just say nothing? I struggle with this issue. How do you point it out? How do you present it without feeding it? But overall, I mean, you would have to think what is pervasive in this society is probably worse than anything we're trying to do, even if by accident we feed it from time to time. I mean, most people are not only accepting of their servitude, they're McDonald's loving it. It's truly amazing the job the control structure has done in these regards. People stand up and actually get emotional during the Star-Spangled Banner before a baseball game. Then there's a moment of silence for the soldiers lost in battle in Afghanistan, fighting terrorism that probably had nothing to do with the people they're fighting. I'm sorry for the good young people in the armed forces who have died in the Middle East. Most of the people in the armed forces, no doubt, are good people. Okay? But honor the soldiers on your own, not as part of a scripted ritual before a sporting event. Not in the way the system wants it done, is what I'm saying. No system ritual is really there to honor any good people. It's likely there so tens of thousands of people breathe life into the fucked up situation that they created, and they all breathe life into it at the same time. That's what these rituals are for before sporting events. What if 20,000 people stood up and shouted down at the giant flag on the field, "What the heck are we doing there in the first place now? It's been 20 years in Afghanistan. Get our boys and girls out. You son of a bitch." But back to the main point, and something I've struggled with. Could the sleeping people who love their servitude be serving the cause of humanity overall better than those who see the evil like us and want to fight it? That can't be, can it? Again, I struggle with it because I know they feed off the negative energy that our movement creates. Let me repeat that. They feed, potentially, literally, off the anger, fear, and negative energy that our movement creates, directly or as a byproduct. I know at this point they have inserted, quote, mistakes into all their fake events so people like us see it and wake up to it. It's almost a certainty that that joke Robbie was no mistake. I've talked about it many times. It's almost a certainty. The giggling fool the day after losing a child was no mistake. Okay? They're not dumb. They could have blocked that out in 2 seconds. It wasn't done live. Give me a break. The major mistakes in fake events and false flags are put there on purpose, so we find them. If 1 million people who can see the fraud then get angry, well, then they love it. They'll likely feed off it like a Harry Potter Dementor. Another reason mistakes and fake events are put there on purpose, so some of us can see it, the mutants and the half-mutants, is perhaps they know how waking up to see the reality of this world will, as I discussed, destroy relationships. This is all too common now. A person, like me, for I've been through it many, many times, identifies a fake event or a false flag. That person, upon telling others close to him, are treated worse than a rapist. When one person can see reality and the other just believes everything Anderson Pooper says is real, it's a certain relationship killer if it keeps being pushed or pressed on. There is no other way to describe it. You just have to be absolutely aware of this. And in my opinion, in terms of putting these fake events so other people notice, a nice secondary benefit to them of one seeing reality and another not is its relationship killing aspect. And as I forget her name, very nice person out west who talks about the chemtrails, blonde-haired woman, maybe 50. She's talked about, and I absolutely concur, in most circles there only seems to be one person that can see all of this. In a family, there seems, in many cases or most cases, there only seems to be one person. In a friendship group, there only seems to be one person. And isn't that convenient for isolating the outcast and then, tar and feathering them? Who knows exactly what their motivations are? Now, I've talked about not paying too much attention to the screen, but I've also been clear to reiterate that studying the motivations of the screen is important, because in understanding its motivations, you know what it wants you to do, or all of us to do, so we could do the opposite. That does not mean we need to know the who, what, where, when, why, and how, all elements. It wants us chasing all elements, as discussed, and we don't need to know all elements. We'll never know all elements. But understanding its motivations in what it wants from us is important. Now, all big thinking and all theories related to this should be kept on the table. Here's one. Perhaps they need a certain percentage of the population, a certain percentage, to be aware of the trick and be aware of the reality script that's being laid down. Meaning, maybe they need it from a cosmic karma perspective. Still looking for a better word for that. But that relates to the need to show us, to satisfy something. some rule that exists somewhere. Luckily, rules still do seem to exist. Luckily. For example, if they could say, we showed 10% what we were up to. These people that call themselves the mutants and the half-mutants, we showed 10%, and 10% was the mark we were told to make. These fools then tried to show others and wake up others, but the town criers were not to be believed. This gives us license to keep screwing the fools over. Another reason why ridiculous elements have been inserted on purpose into events is so when mutants like us notice it, they notice us. Then they spend 10 years tracking our Facebook likes and our YouTube comments and thumbs up in videos. Not to hunt you down and put you in a Walmart FEMA camp, but to study our collective for many reasons. Let me go away from the book. This is very, very important. Guys, look. At this point, they know exactly who you are. Okay? If you've ever commented 3 or 4 times, or thumbs up or thumbs down, they know exactly who you are. Nobody should be scared of anything. I really believe this. I'm not trying to make people feel more comfortable with participating in channels like this. I really believe this. I believe they study us collectively. They're absolutely interested. They might assign us collectively into a mutant category, and then they want to watch what we are interested in. How we're running with certain topics collectively. They're not looking at you individually, or as Stephen whatever said, he's going to put a tag on your mailbox to see what kind of FEMA camp you're going to be put in. Come on. But we have a responsibility here. If you have any sort of thinking that, I really should stop commenting, or I should stop Facebook, or I should go quiet on the comments or whatever. Hey, if you're just sick and fed up with the whole thing and going to move on with your life, that's fine. But if you're doing it out of fear that they're going to tag you or find you, first of all, they already have. They know exactly who you are. Second, they're not interested in little old you or commenters, or they're not, okay? They're not, I mean, I'm sure I'm a peon to them as well. They're not interested in you individually, and we do have a responsibility here. Okay? It's like that scene from, there's a lot of good truth in Kingdom of Heaven. It's a very good movie. Very enjoyable movie. Kingdom of Heaven. The king with the leprosy or whatever, with the mask on, he says something like, when you're put before God, to saying virtue was not convenient at the time won't do. The excuse of virtue wasn't convenient at the time won't do. So they already know who you are, and to hide out, that is probably not fulfilling your purpose here at this moment in time in history. Okay, in the book, this is just titled "Thinking Big and Then Some." So some way out here thoughts are coming. Now it seems like only absurdly big thinking will one day get close to hitting the mark in explaining the nature of our reality. If it's not, what does Seal say in that song? To survive we need to get a little crazy. Was it a truth drop? Maybe. Nevertheless, he might not have realized what he was writing or whatever, but that's accurate. In order to survive, we need to get a little crazy. In order to hit the mark, we need to come up with theories that people around us would think are batshit crazy. So here's some of them. But it's also an exercise in training our minds to be able to see around 2 corners at the same time. For example, thinking this way is like what Dr. Haddon showed Jodie Foster in the movie Contact, so the pages of the blueprints would line up. He said, you have to think like a vegan, and that means on multiple dimensions. It's an excellent scene in the movie worth watching again. Perhaps upon our death, we will have an immediate understanding of what just went on in this life, the way waking up from a dream in the morning just makes sense. What I believe is that upon gaining an understanding of exactly what this reality construct is all about, whether we gain that understanding on the day of our death or whenever, it will be downright shocking to us once we understand what this was all about, what this life test was all about. No, it won't be horrific to us, I don't believe. I think it'll be almost ridiculous. And I'm going to correct that in the book. I don't really mean ridiculous, but it will be, I would want to say more like more trivial, where you'll kick yourself for saying, oh my gosh, I stressed over being able to pay those bills, or I got a late notice and I was so stressful because I got the late notice on a Sunday and I couldn't call anybody until the little trivial things we get caught up in, I think will be absurd, and it'll make so much sense. So is that what that life was for? Once we see the inner workings of this reality with a new perspective, whether that comes now or tomorrow or the day of our death or whenever, what went on here will be so far removed from anything we possibly can imagine now, it will be incomprehensible to us now, in my opinion. It'll probably be like dreams are to us now. Think how inconsequential dreams are a second after you wake up. You'll say, oh, that's all it was, a dream. Now it all fits together now. I'm not saying this reality has no meaning or consequence in saying this, not at all. I'm just pointing out how this life may very simply and easily be put into perfect context at the moment of our death or at some point in the future. Oh, that's what it was. Okay, I got it. All that craziness makes perfect sense now. The creatures did this, they did 9/11, they said Russian hacked the election for 25 years in a row. I see what their role was. Okay, I got it. Now let's just open a box of donuts and move on. Now once we have this realization that, oh, that was like a dream was in this life, but let's hope unlike dreams, we don't instantly forget. Let's hope unlike dreams, we don't instantly forget whatever our understanding of it was or whatever the lesson learned was. So perhaps the practice of remembering dreams in the morning, a practice of trying to remember dreams in the morning, is a transferable skill to potentially remembering this life in the next, or remembering what happened in this life after death, or remembering the lessons learned in this life after death. And maybe the lessons of this life need to be remembered for us to move on. Now we all agree, this life is backwards, it's inverted. There's probably a reason they presented the Bizarro Superman next to Superman. Everything on the Bizarro Superman's world is exactly the opposite. There's a reason for all that shit given to us as kids. And what do all the gurus tell us? We heard this a million times all over the internet, right? We get a mind wipe before birth. And we get a mind wipe and we forget. Like it implies we have, as spirits, immortal spirits, before this existence on this realm, we had all the knowledge, we knew everything, and then something mind wiped us as we came in here. That's what it implies, right? Then our job in life, then, we're told, is just to remember. Put it all together to remember. That's one of our goals in life. This is a common theme, all of this. Mind wipe, blah, blah, blah. Now, hasn't this world told us to embrace the opposite of the popular presentation? When we wake up in the morning, most of us lose the ability to remember anything we were dreaming about after just a few seconds of just getting out of bed and stumbling towards the toothbrush. We just forget all the dreams. What if death is the same? How do you know? The recycled trick may be to work the opposite way of what the popular presentation is on YouTube. Perhaps at death, we are or supposed to recall the life lessons that we just went through in this whole life. What was it for? Recall the life lessons. And the creatures have created a situation or a state where we can't recall the life that was just lived, or it's extremely difficult, or we don't remember the lessons. It's all vague. Again, do you remember your dreams a few seconds after waking up? Maybe this is what goes on. Something or some notion pops into your mind, or whatever is making this presentation at the moment of your death. You don't remember what you just did down there in that life? No, for some reason I don't. Well, what do you think you were down there for? You must go back. You must go back. You don't remember the lesson? You must go back. What if somebody told us when you woke up in the morning and then after you brushed your teeth, somebody popped in and said, okay, you recall all your dreams. That's kind of the point of what you just did. You just laid in that bed for 8 hours. What do you think it was for? Recall all your dreams. And Talk to me about the lessons and the interpretations. I don't remember any dreams I just had. Well, then you must go back to sleep. I don't know. I'm just keeping big thinking on the table. Maybe they found a way to have us forget the lessons of the life just learned. There's some sort of creature or Lochnar here. Maybe they found a way to have us forget the lessons of the life just learned. This would facilitate potentially a need to do it all over again. This is the opposite of the mind wipe. If I hear mind wipe many more times on YouTube, then I know this is the bizarro Superman world and the reality is the opposite. Maybe. Now, if there's any chance that what I just presented is true, and like a blind squirrel, I just hit the mark, then it certainly should be taken seriously, considered, and prepared for. But what could possibly be training for something like that? Remembering after death? What? Well, there's good news, because we experience something very similar every single day. It's called waking up from a dream. If anyone reading this is saying, I remember all my dreams every day anyway, well, whoop-de-doo, good for you. That's extremely rare. Personally, I forget all my dreams, unless there's a trigger that pops up during the day to remind me of something I dreamt about. Like if something spills, I might go, oh yeah, I had a dream about something spilled in my dream, and then be able to recollect many of it. But I need a trigger. I forget it all. However, if you have the mindset of trying to recall dreams the moment you wake up, I believe, of course, they will have a better chance of being recalled. This is a skill that can be learned. Also, there are several times that most people will wake up during the middle of the night, where at that very instant, they will totally remember and understand the dream that was just taking place. So, work on techniques so you learn to remember your dreams, whether it be in the morning, or if you wake up in the middle of the night, you might just take a moment and say, ooh, I'm gonna record that dream. I'm gonna remember what I was dreaming about, and then I'm gonna play it back in the morning. It might take a while, but I think everybody can learn this sort of skill. A simple approach or the way to start may be in the morning to hang something over the bed, or to place something over the alarm clock, or to place something on the wall that you, quote, wake up to every morning. Many people sleep very habitually, and they wake up on their left side almost every morning. If that's not for you, then find other techniques. These are just examples. But if you see something as you wake up, you could put that there to trigger you or remind you to immediately try to hold on to what you dreamed about. And even at that moment, you could have a little notebook, or you could have the little hand recorders that they used to sell at Radio Shack. Boy, I miss my Radio Shack. You could just grab it and say, oh, I was dreaming about this, and try to record everything you can. These little hand recorders are, $10 or less. So these are all techniques, and I believe it's worthwhile doing this. This is the development of a skill that I believe will yield a benefit in many areas, even if what I presented here is completely wrong. Well, Matt, I don't want to go through all that if learning that skill won't potentially help me after death. Well, how do I know? I'm throwing shit on the wall and seeing what stinks. This sticks, not stinks, sticks. This seems to make sense. And again, it's good to do all of these things, because if there's a 5% chance there's some validity to this, well, it's potentially monumentally important, but it's good to do it if there's no downside. What would be the downside in training your mind to remember your dreams? If it's applicable on your death, well, wonderful. If not, I can just sense there's a benefit to it. In some way, there's a benefit into remembering all that time we spent every night in that other reality. And just going away from the book for a moment, people that ponder all of this stuff, that is the real world and this is the fake world, and I don't buy that. I don't buy into that at all. And my dreams are completely absurd and nonsensical in most cases. I mean, it's just walk around a corner, a dog jumps in my arms, run over, jump on top of a car, a hot air balloon comes down and sweeps me up, and then Somebody's yelling at me that I need to cook eggs. There's no point to it. It's all a bunch of nonsense, my dreams. But I'm going to try to remember them. I'm going to try to remember them because I forget almost everything I dream about. If I just take a few steps on the floor and towards the bathroom in the morning, I forget everything I dreamed about. I'm going to make this a practice.